This episode of Outdoor Journal Radio is brought to you in part by the Invasive Species Centre, protecting Canada's land and water from invasive species. Freedom Cruise Canada, rent the boat, own the memories. J&B Cycle and Marine, your home for all things power sports, boats, and equipment. And Sail, the ultimate destination for your outdoor adventures. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again. Angelo Viola. He is Peter Bowman.
Hello.
The crew is the crew. Vova, Nick, and Dean.
Come on now.
Wonderful episode. Before we get into today's stuff, by the way, we're going to be joined a little later on by a fascinating gentleman. You do not want to miss this. His name is Oliver Nye.
Oliver Nye, the fishing guy.
Oliver Nye, the fishing guy. That should be his moniker.
Yeah, he should. I do it.
Founder of Big Bass Dreams. Oh, man, has this guy got some stories that we've been looking into. Before we do that, you might be wondering to yourselves, why is he wearing that?
Protect Ontario. We got lots of fish to protect. We got lots
wildlife,
of
fish.
trees.
Also people.
Yeah, sure,
anyways,
I guess
we're
so.
in throes of a provincial election in this part of the world, and I thought I would throw my support out there for everybody, not necessarily to vote for this, although that would be the wise thing, but hey, that's getting into politics, but the importance of voting, period. The importance of voting, period. Because if we don't vote, there should be a card. After you vote, there should be a card that everybody carries in their wallet.
Do say.
And I'll tell you what that card should be. You should be able to pull it out and say, I voted. And only people that have that card for the next 4 years or whatever that term is for the election that they voted for, only those people should be allowed to dialogue about the government. Good or bad. Only those people. So,
Otherwise, they're hypocrites, right?
well, I got a story later on. I'm not going to take up, but before we close up, I'm going to tell you about my encounter with one of those people, and that's why I'm making this comment. But only if you are a card-carrying member of the voting community should you be allowed to even discuss government issues.
I agree with that.
You don't vote,
that.
that's fine. You don't want to vote, that's cool. It's not cool.
Yeah.
But it's your
shut the hell
prerogative.
up.
Just shh.
Yeah.
Take what you get. Shh.
There you go.
That's all. All righty then. Having said that,
Alrighty then.
I did mention Oliver Nye joining us here in a few moments, founder of Big Bass Dreams. He's a brand influencer, I guess, about big bass fishing and angling lifestyle in general.
He's changed it a lot. I will say he has done a great job of changing the mentality and the style of fishing that he does going after big bass. So interesting guy.
And yes, we were interested in talking to him about his career in pursuit of trophy largemouth bass coming from the state of California. I always think of it as sort of largemouth bass country as far as trophy fish go.
Yeah, for sure.
But just his techniques and styles and whatnot in fishing in general, I think it's going to be interesting to talk to him. But that's not why we invited him here today. He dropped a bomb on us recently, announcing that he's contemplating telling all of us that we should maybe be consuming
Oh, my.
largemouth bass.
I knew that was coming.
Thank you. So that's what we want to talk to him about.
Yeah,
when he
interesting
comes in.
concept, especially from a guy that is a trophy hunter that is strictly catch and release, et cetera, and now he's starting to change his ideas, I think. So it'll be interesting.
FishingCanada.com, or better yet, shop.fishingcanada.com is the place you need to be if you're looking for goodies.
That right there. If you're looking for that right there. Not that. You don't want that.
Is that for sale?
A couple of bucks probably get that in your boat for the day.
The lovely swag that we have there. Go check it out. Always new stuff, stuff going on sale, new stuff coming in. Never hurts to go check it out.
That's the old walleye hoodie, right?
That's the original.
The original. The OG.
Yeah, the OG. That's the OG.
Come on now.
Listener feedback, Mr. Bowman, this week. A wonderful
Yes.
listener feedback. kind of touches
from
foam.
John Horth via YouTube. And this is, I'll let you read it, Ange, but
Yeah.
in response to Ange's comments on episode 156 that wearing life jackets should be mandated. Boom.
So John goes on to say, if I have to legally wear a life jacket in my 23 mile per hour boat, you, meaning obviously he's pointing at me, and very well done, you should wear a full face helmet on your Harley, so you won't have to
So we don't have
pay, so that we don't have to pay repairs to your pretty face. Very well put.
Got a smiley face emoji after it.
Although, now in my defense to that comment, I would like to say that I don't think it's a good comparison. The reason being is that in this jurisdiction, most of Canada for that matter, you have to wear a helmet, right? They don't mandate the type of helmet that you wear, but you must wear a helmet, obviously, for reasons that are obvious or should be obvious. And I equate the helmet to wearing a life jacket. I don't think they can mandate or should mandate the type of life jacket that you wear. For example, we wear the little beautiful light, ultralight little suspender type life jackets that self-inflate. I don't think they should mandate that that's what everybody wears.
No,
I think
of course not.
they should just, when I say that it should be mandated, I mean you have to have some form of flotation on your body, not tucked away in the bowels of your boat. That's all I'm saying. And that to me is the same as saying you must wear a DOT or what other approval marks on the helmet in order to be on the highway with a motorcycle. But you make a good point. Point well taken. Appreciate the commentary. Does he get anything for that? Like, how does that work, Dean?
No, you talked about him.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
He should be just happy that I talked to him about him?
Well, Dean says you haven't seen this guy's name too much, John Horth's name, right? So he might be a new viewer or whatever. He just got on board just to give you a little 23 mile an hour.
So what he's trying to
shot.
say is that my boat's slow. I don't need a life jacket. And
Yeah.
and here's where that thinking, John, is not sound, because I don't think that all water fatalities due to drowning happen when a craft is in motion. In fact, if I recall back to the old radio days, Sergeant Schlorf,
I
who
know
was
where you're
our
going here.
in-house safety expert, I remember him every Saturday morning, he would tell the stories about fatalities that happened that particular weekend on a body of water, et cetera. And a lot of them were people who had fallen into the water when the boat was stationary.
Yes.
Not moving.
I.e., they found these bodies, number one, without a life jacket on, and number two, with their zipper open because they were taking a leak off the side of the boat, and they fell in. Yeah. A lot of the fatalities
in cold
are that.
water, hypothermia, ba-boom, you know what the rest is.
And Slorpy would have said, blatantly said, had those people been wearing their those guys in this case been wearing their life jackets, most of them wouldn't have drowned. So
yeah, I don't think speed or the movement of the boat should have.
No.
Because then you're going to start getting into that debate. Well, my boat does 23 miles per hour. The loss is 24. You know what I mean?
Got her governed down, Ange.
Like, who's going to determine the speed of the boat? So, John, in as much as we appreciate this type of letter, we do, honestly. Because you know what? If nothing else,
Thank you,
it allows us to go on with this dialogue about boat safety. I have to disagree with you, though, on this one, in that I shouldn't have to wear a full face shield on my Harley. I wear a helmet. That's enough, damn it. It's enough. In California, where we're going to be going here in a few minutes, they don't even have to wear helmets,
Come
I
on,
believe.
really?
Well,
Still?
I don't know.
Come
I
on
shouldn't
now.
say that. Maybe we can ask. But there are some states
They're still doing that?
in the U.S. where it is. I think Florida is one of those states, to be honest with
It's
you.
your choice if you want to or not.
Entirely up to you. And to this day, when I see guys on any motorcycle, but I was going to say one of these big Harleys and stuff, cruising around with no helmet on, I get the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
It's just
Scary.
like, whoa,
Because
it's so wrong.
we can get to a whole thing here, but the worst part about that is that you might be the best Harley driver in the world, but some
Doesn't
asshole
matter.
hits you and knocks you off, and you get your head on something, and you could have been saved by the helmet. So, yeah.
So, anyways, thank you, John Horth, via YouTube. Now, is this one of those special deals where they have to? No.
Next time.
Yeah.
Are you? Are we bothering you?
On the
today,
next.
Dean?
No.
He's
On the
No,
next
because
one.
I feel like I'm interrupting him.
No, I just don't want
busy.
to give John hopes that he had $100 coming.
Oh, there you go. All right.
We have a guy later who.
Oh, another.
You think John would buy a life jacket with that $100? You think or no?
So, right. How does this differ from somebody who would qualify?
The punctuation, no question mark. So it's not a question.
You see?
If he asked something.
And do you want to wear a full-face shield on your helmet, maybe?
Yeah.
Question mark. But instead he put that pretty face, emoji face.
So he gets penalized because of poor grammar? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he didn't ask a question.
Dean said questions.
That wasn't my idea, by the way, John. Okay, you heard it. It was
John,
Dean.
you see, John might be oblivious to that idea, and he just thought, hey, I heard that, and I'm gonna tell Ange what I think. All
right.
So.
That has a lot of stench to it. And speaking of stench, there you go. Thank you. Invasive Species Centre wants to talk to us about tench. Who knows? Do you know what tench is? I'm a little tench right now.
I was just want to say
because of the way.
tension. I was thinking there was some tension, but
No, it's not nice.
I get you. It's an invasive species.
It's an invasive species. Which fish has invaded almost every corner of the planet aside from Antarctica and caused notable damage in regions where it has become prolific? The answer is?
The tench.
Thank you.
Tench is a medium-sized, deep-bodied fish with small scales, rounded fins, and a single barbel on each side of the mouth. Kind of looks maybe like a fall fish. I don't. People probably don't have a fall fish, or maybe a big sucker, like a sucker type of look to them. They're olive color fish were brought into Canada illegally in 1986. Go figure, right?
Yep.
When they escaped and made their way into the St. Lawrence River.
40 years ago.
Although not established in the Great Lakes, they have been since spotted as far south as the Bay of Quinte and Lake Ontario. So this is the same story that is ongoing with every invasive species. St. Lawrence, Great Lakes, blah, 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 blah.
And once they get into that little deal, it's
not
pretty much
easy to
over.
get them out.
They're highly adaptable to new environments and compete with native fish. Obviously, that's the biggest problem, like minnows, bullhead, suckers in waters where they've invaded by eating significant amounts of snails, insects, and other benthic invertebrates.
Wow, that's a big word.
I know. Why did they sneak these big words on me like that? They should know better than that.
Not only could they outcompete native species for food, but it is predicted that tench could decrease water quality and increase the transmission of different parasites and diseases between other fishes in the Great Lakes. Wow.
That's why Ontario's made them a prohibited species under the Invasive Species Act, meaning it's illegal to import, possess, transport, and or release them anywhere in the province.
And that, people, I know a guy.
Who knows a guy?
I know a guy who knows a
Who's this
guy. Is the other guy, his brother is the guy, and he wants to catch a tench. If he wants to catch a tench, I got a good feeling that it's a prized thing for him, and he'll release that tench. Well, that guy's brother, you better kill that fish if you catch it, if you know what I'm saying.
Now, tench is big in Europe. It's a popular game fish or something. Not game fish, but they angle for
what
it.
they call a game fish, I guess. Yeah, they angle for them all the time. And those big multi-species tournaments, like when they have, those big tournaments, and you can catch anything and everything goes in the box or in the net, whatever. Tench is part of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
To learn more about tench, including how to identify them, which is the most important thing, visit the Invasive Species Centre website. If you've seen a tench, first of all, in order to know that you've seen a tench, you have to know what a tench looks like. Or another invasive species in the wild, report it to Invading Species Hotline or online at eddmaps.com. That's eddmaps.com. Help keep our waterways free of invasive species or invaders.
Yeah.
Come on now.
There you go.
Tench.
Story.
Yeah, a very interesting news story from Michigan. So Michigan has essence, a lot of places has an actual sturgeon fishing season, and where you can catch and keep and kill a sturgeon, right?
Obviously, that one doesn't qualify for catch and
He's
release.
already started gutting that baby. He's looking for
Exactly.
caviar in that sucker. Well, this is interesting. So, this is from our friend Calvin Pennell.
Hey, Calvin. Good
Facebook
work.
fan page. Calvin's still active, and we love him. But he brought this story to us.
Super fan. Super fan.
Yes. Michigan's shortest fishing season was back in 2025, but it only lasted 17 minutes.
Oh my.
A fishing season that lasted 17 minutes. So the 2025 lake sturgeon fishing season on Black Lake in Sheboygan. Oh, nice. In Presque counties began at 8 a.m. Saturday morning and they ended at 8:17, hence 17 minutes, when there was a quota of 6 sturgeon reached. So basically what they're saying, for whatever reason, this lake has a 6 sturgeon limit. I don't know why you wouldn't just say no limit or whatever.
Per angler?
No.
Total.
The season, the lake.
Total.
And what these guys do in a nutshell, what they do is they all get on the same website with the DNR, et cetera, and they're all on this. As soon as you catch them, you report the fish on your phone. You report them. So Ange, there's 5 gone. Ange, you get that 6th one. Boom! You get I think they can spear them too, but they catch them with by hands or spear them. As soon as you get that one, Ange, boom. Okay, I got number 6.
She's closed.
And that goes out, blankets out to everybody's phone. Just pull up your lines, boys. Pull out your spears because you're not going anymore.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
So 6.
We've experienced something like that on a different scale. If I'm not mistaken, DFO out on the east coast of Canada has the same kind of setup, although it doesn't take 17 minutes, with their bluefin tuna fishery.
Right.
Because everybody has to report in
report 'em in.
immediately, and they have a
The
total
DFOs are-
allotment that is open. And whatever amount of time it takes.
Yeah, and you have tags out there.
Yep.
We had at the time, we had
yeah.
tags like deer tags or whatever. And exactly that. And they just say once the tags are done, shut her down, boys. And it goes over to the VHF.
17 minutes.
The alerts were sent at 8:05, 8:07, 8:08, 8:14, 8:17. That was the second to the 6th one. So
That's funny.
the largest sturgeon harvested was 64 inches long and weighed 78.3 pounds. So I'm assuming they eat these fish because sturgeon are good eating, right?
Good.
Yeah.
Whoo-hoo, there's an understatement.
Yeah, so
They're
it's kind of a
fantastic.
crazy, but a 17-minute season. So obviously it's like a shotgun start. Everybody's ready.
God.
Okay, go. 8 o'clock, go. You know what I mean? And try your best to get on the best spot because if you're sitting there waiting for, there might be some coming by here in an hour or two, you're done. You got to be in
imagine,
primo area.
Like being a real hardcore sturgeon fisherman, and you've been waiting for this moment, and you've got all the gear, and you're all prepped. You haven't slept for 3 days.
Oh, yeah.
Or better yet, you're driving for like 12 hours to get to where you need to be.
And you want to be that one of those 6 fish. I got to get one of them this year. I'm going to get one.
In 2023, the season lasted 65 minutes.
Yeah, it was a good one.
And the largest fish caught then was a 55.5-inch female that weighed 35.5 pounds.
So much smaller fish in that sense in weight, but
36
still.
minute SID 22. So it's traditionally a short season, obviously.
They
right?
know going in, but I bet you they were surprised. They did the old "don't" when when this year went. What the hell? That's
Anyways,
awesome. What a great
fascinating
story.
story. It's on fishingcanada.com as we speak. If you want to read the whole thing, obviously we just give
And I'm
you
just
a,
assuming that they're spearing on that because a lot of
Yeah.
times they do that in the U.S. So I might be wrong on that one, but
maybe.
But that guy's doesn't look like a spear mark, but it might be right through it. Who knows?
I wonder if there's probably not. I was going to say there's sizes too. Is there a slot limit size or?
That's a good question.
Yeah, probably not. I
Probably
would
not.
think.
If they're spearing, they're not because you got to. There's no releasing that guy.
Oops.
Just kidding. Throw him back.
That's an under. Throw him, shake him off.
Retract those barbs.
Fan question of the week brought to you by the good people at fishfindermounts.com.
Come on now.
That's fishfindermounts.com.
Come on now.
I had an interesting comment about fishfindermounts.com from a good friend of ours, Kinger.
Oh yeah.
He said that him and his wife were watching the show last weekend.
Yes.
And his wife couldn't help but make comment on how high tech our boat looked with all of the gadgetry hanging off the side of it and stuff.
Yes.
Looked like a scientific, one of those big scientific ships that they send out to.
And I was on that text feed,
Yes,
and I
that's
said,
right.
yeah, by the way, King, you can buy next year's boat if you
Yeah,
buy at the end
that's
of the
right.
year. And I said, Paula can buy the next
Paula.
year's boat. So, and he probably stopped him in his tracks right there. She also said that Angelo has a very attractive, or not attractive, very nice voice. What did she say? Something
I
about your
liked
voice.
attractive. I
Okay,
think
attractive
that
voice. She
would
did-
work extremely well for
As
me.
you keep talking, I'll find
I'll
out the
find
exact,
out right there. But
exact what
anyways,
she said.
she was referring to all of the gadgetry, the Garmin stuff, especially that we've got hanging off the boat because of fishfindermounts.com.
My God, I got a lot of texts.
Oh, it's
horrible.
crazy. Don't even start. Fishfindermounts.com. But brings you this segment. This segment is the fan question of the week.
Come on now.
Come on, it's a good question, by the way.
Submitted by Curtis Roberts via YouTube. Now, Curtis Roberts via YouTube, I believe, and I stand to be corrected, Dean, I'm sure you will correct me on this. This was submitted via YouTube, but Curtis also subscribed if he wasn't already a subscriber. How do you know they're subscribers, by the way?
For me, it pops up with a little symbol beside them that tells me if they're subscribed.
Oh, so you know right off the bat.
Yeah.
They can't fool you.
They can't fool me.
They can't say, yeah, long time subscriber, I'm in for the contest. No.
So when you guys go into that YouTube studio and stuff like that, that's where it is?
It's like a little red dot beside
Okay.
them. Yep.
The boys got it all under control, and you and I, we just watch the stuff. We don't.
So you too, so he hasn't won yet. We have to read this. And
If you like
we're-
what he did, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to determine that here in a moment. But just to let other folks know, just by submitting a question via YouTube
Come on now.
and subscribing to the YouTube channel, and then you can send a question to us at info@fishingcanada.com.
I like that
Come on
graphic.
now.
I like that. That's
Thank you.
very nice. Well done.
Wow, look
Ange
at
told me
you
to
guys.
redo the old one, so I can't.
Yeah, that's
Good job,
very
bro.
nice. See, when you push them a little bit
Look
harder,
at that
right?
snake he's got there. I don't know. Might want to
little baby
Photoshop
burbot.
in a little. Maybe it's a sturgeon.
Maybe. Curtis Roberts says, hey guys, question for the show. Have you guys ever noticed the change in attitude anglers have on the ice versus in the summer when it comes to catch and release fishing? It's an interesting question already. I get fish can be harder. I'm assuming he says, I guess fish.
Fish.
I get fish can be harder to release, but it seems that just about every angler in the winter is looking to keep a limit where the same guys in the summer would likely be releasing the majority of their fish. And I agree with him 100%.
Absolutely.
And
I
I
do too, from what
know
I've perception.
people in my circle who wouldn't dream of killing a fish in open water, but for some reason, as soon as
Really?
that, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I can name you, and if I give you his name, you'd like, wow, you're right. Make it hard water, and they will kill everything they come in contact with.
I wonder. So
So-
we got to calculate this out in our heads. Number one, would they be thinking colder water? Well, the fish might taste a lot better because instead of this 36-degree water instead of 75-degree water, maybe
Okay.
if they're thinking that way.
Okay.
The other thing would be my thought as to why they're even getting out there is these people. There's a lot of people that aren't as fortunate as us and having these nice boats, and they can't get out to the middle of a lake and anywhere they want on a lake in the summertime. So
But they wouldn't be
can-
qualifying for this comment, though, because
Right.
I think what Curtis is saying is that
Yeah,
same
yeah,
person.
you're right. I was going to say that
right?
they'd go out there and
Yeah,
Yeah.
those I can understand. Like
Yeah.
the hardcore ice fisherman that just
Yep.
goes out fishing.
But you're right. That's
through the
a
ice.
comparison of boat to open water. Yeah, I don't know what else I would even if they're thinking it's easier to catch tons of fish in this. I don't know what, but I do agree that there's
It's the
there's
weirdest
definitely
thing.
a catch and keep mentality for hitting the ice. Maybe it's I'm going out there in the hardest conditions. I need to bring something home to qualify my.
I don't know. But it's absolutely true, and it's happening every day all around us.
know?
People that we
Any
know.
ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I notice it. I feel like I may keep more fish in the winter too. I think it's almost like I was telling Pete earlier, a bit of like a scarcity thing, a little bit, because I notice I'm not going to move as easily when I'm out. Like pulling a hut by hand out into a lake.
Right.
Or if I'm in a boat, I can hop around. I'm in a.
By the way, everybody, Dean's hut is 200 pounds that he's pulling.
Yeah.
His portable hut is 200. It's literally 200 pounds. Just to let you know. Okay, go ahead, Dean.
It's not meant to be portable. I've just been pulling it around. But so I don't pull it around very often. I go to one spot and I wait.
But what's that got to do with keeping everything that you catch?
Because I find that, so I tell Pete all the time that when I catch, say, perch in the summer,
Yes.
I'll throw them back, and then at the end of the day, be like, oh, I should have
kept what?
kept those. But at
Always,
the
yeah.
time, I was like, well, I'll catch more later. It's not a big deal.
Right.
But when I set up on a spot and a fish comes in, I'm like, okay, this could be my only chance of the whole day. I'm keeping the walleye, or I'm keeping the perch that just came in.
But you go in advance thinking that way already on the ice.
Not necessarily all
Oh.
the time, but I find once I do catch them, I'm like, wow, it would be a shame to throw this back. This could be the only thing I catch all day.
Oh,
That's kind of
I
where my
see.
head's at. Because I definitely keep more in the winter, I will say that.
Yeah, I think everybody's the same
Yeah.
boat.
It's an interesting.
I think mentally, it's a meat fishery. I think on the ice. I think that's the mentality. We're going out to bring home the goods.
Yeah,
we're going out.
if we catch some big ones, that's awesome. We'll take a picture and throw them back. But boy, I want to get my limit of 16,
Yeah.
17, 18
Yeah.
inches too.
Yeah.
I know guys who keep some monsters on the ice who would never do that in the summer.
Yeah, it's
Really?
weird.
Oh yeah, I know a few guys like that.
So like 10
So do
pound
I.
walleye.
oh yeah,
that
So
would
do I.
they
they-
keep some tanks. Yeah.
Bizarre.
on the ice,
It's-
but throw them back. Wow,
It's bizarre. It's bizarre.
that is craziness. Because now they're full of eggs, no matter what. You're killing a 10 pounder, but when you're getting through the ice, those are big hens that are just full of eggs and just getting ready to go in there and drop those eggs, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure. There might be something to what you said about, the mentality is that cold water, better
Yeah.
eating fish, maybe hot, warmer water. The thought
they've had
there is,
experiences, bad
I don't want. There's, they're going to be wormy. There's
Yeah.
not. They're not. Yeah, it could be that too. But man, he's absolutely right. Curtis makes a great point, to the point where I think Curtis, in my opinion, deserves something for that question.
Well, there is a question mark after catch and release fishing. He did
Yeah.
put a question mark in there
Yeah,
now, although it
qualifies.
wasn't really in the right area. But you could just kind of divert that.
Well,
winning
he's
over
just sort of closing the loop at the end where he says,
Exactly.
I get it, the fishing is, but I think that had all the earmarks of a winner.
Wow.
So congratulations, Curtis Roberts. You,
Give me a hell yeah!
does he have to do, love that.
Steve Austin was the best. He used to stun Vince McMahon right in the middle of the ring, stun the boss, and then the boss's daughter.
Does Curtis have to do anything more, jump through hoops or stand on his head
I'll
or
find
spit out nickels or anything like that? No?
I'll track them down.
You'll track him down. Congratulations, Curtis. You get 100 buckaroos. That's redeemable. 100 buckaroos redeemable at fishingcanada.com, the store where you can buy all kinds of goodies with that. Buy you some extra, too. Let the folks there know how much you appreciate their stuff. Huh?
Excellent.
What do you think?
I think so. He'll
All
look
right.
good in a nice hoodie or something,
All right, the main feature today is up to bat. Before we get to that, I want to remind folks, by the way, it's brought to you by Sail.
Get
Today's
outta here.
special guest is brought to you by Sail.
I've heard of those guys. They're
Home
pretty good.
of all good things outdoor, especially this time of year. I know, I know that could be argued and debated because their summertime collection of goods is just overwhelming. But it seems like in the winter, during the winter season, it just, I don't know.
It's funny when you go to the fishing department. Even in the winter, their ice fishing section is a very minuscule, tiny little area compared to the rest of this open water stuff all over the walls, right? So you're right.
anything, whether it's tackle, clothing, anything to do with winter activities,
Including
especially
ice fishing.
including ice fishing,
As we do right now.
and including winter camping, which is another whole different ball game, right?
Yep. It's getting more popular now. Guys
yeah, it
are
is.
winter camping on the ice now when they're fishing. That's what they're doing.
But I noticed they're starting to bring in some of the warm weather stuff. So it's a good time to be at Sail. If you don't have a Sail store near you, which you might not, we do. Fortunately for us, there's one right over the hill here. Just go to sail.ca and check out all the goodies there. There's a ton of sales going on, not the least of which is 60% off some key selected items. So make sure you visit it today.
Yeah.
Sail.ca.
Yeah.
All right, now, Our guest today, we love what he does for a living. Don't get us wrong. It's great because he's an avid bass maniac, like most of us are. But we're going to talk about another element that he adds to the mix, which we're still having a little bit of a difficult
I
time
think the
with.
whole bass world will have, and time again.
And
But
that is the consumption of bass, in particular largemouth bass. I have personally never tried it, so we're about to find out.
I have. I've eaten them.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Well, there you go. He just came out. Oliver Nye joins us from California. How are you doing, Oliver?
Doing all right, gentlemen. Thank you guys for having me on.
Hey, thanks for coming on,
Our
buddy.
pleasure, man. Is it winter down there, too, or is it you guys are all summer all the time?
I mean, do you not see the puffy jacket here?
Yeah,
I
like,
mean,
what's
it's
up with that?
downright frigid.
That's because he's got air conditioning in his office. He's going to take it off to go outside, probably.
Oliver, for those of you who might not know him, he's founder of Big Bass Dreams, a brand that's focused on, guess what? Big bass fishing and that whole angling lifestyle. And we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that. But talk to us about this latest craze or trend or what it is that you're messaging that's a little bit different than your previous whatever number of years you've been involved
many
in this
years of
business.
catch and release. Then all of a sudden, Oliver had a little change.
Yeah, absolutely. It's taken decades to come to this enlightened perspective.
Nice.
And we've been exploring it in depth amongst my own colleagues, within my circle, amongst my even Big Bass Dream teams spread throughout the country, and the audiences that tune into the content that we put out there for everybody to digest. And what the shift is getting people to consider the effect that 100% catch and release mentality may have on your fisheries, because it's had a drastic effect on ours. And I come from the former trophy largemouth mecca, Southern California, and
sure.
a 2-hour perimeter or radius from LA had the biggest bass in the world for a couple decades here.
Yeah.
And that pretty much has ceased to exist. And there's a culmination of factors, and just like anything else that we're dealing with in this modern world that we live in, things and topics are complex. The issues are complex, but there are definitely common attributes of what has led to the demise of our trophy largemouth fishing opportunities on our public lakes. And one of them is under harvest. And as a culture, and I don't care where you live, if you have largemouth and smallmouth bass around you, there is a culture of passionate anglers that love these fish, just like I still do and have since I started, with every fiber in my being. And we have been pulled by our heartstrings and in our emotions and fed potentially some false narratives in the hopes that it's going to continue to perpetuate fishing opportunities. And it's really resulting in a slew of stunted bass populations throughout the country and even into Canada in some cases.
So
now there,
just to highlight what you just said, most bass anglers that, especially younger bass anglers that just cut their teeth on bass when it comes to fishing, it is almost to the point where it's sacrilegious to cause any harm to a largemouth bass. Let's be perfectly honest about it.
We've lived that, and we're teaching that to our kids. Right?
And we've done that because we believed that good, sound fish management was the way to go. As more and more pressure is put on these animals, the idea is we just can't take any of its membership out if we want it to perpetuate. But we have found out since, as you just pointed out, not just in the bass itself, but also in fish in general, that some bodies of water. Now, let me just say, there are some bodies of water where it needs a total catch and release policy. Those are lakes that are in danger, or for whatever reason, the population of that particular species is on a teeter-totter. So handling that one in a total release method is probably still the way to go. But bass fishing in general, I think messages like yours, it's important to get it out there, because you're right. Even here, by the way, it's not just in California. We know of lakes where it's a total release fishery that the fish are getting stunted a little bit, and we always question it. How is that possible? These fish are still 3.5 pounds, and it's been like that for 20 years. Why are we not seeing any 6 and 7 pounders? So I think this is a perfect time to run that notion up the flagpole and let people weigh in on the discussions, because there is not a lot of study here, by the way, scientific study in Canada that is starting to lean towards that. There's a few individuals that are talking about it like yourself, but we still don't have anything sort of in stone yet saying, okay, here's the new deal. So it's important. We joked at the beginning, but we love what you're doing. I don't know about eating fish bass on a regular basis.
Is there, Oliver? Is there a type of lake in California, like you're experiencing this? Is there something to do with the lakes, the sizes, the forage, the other species, or what's the deal going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's a complex puzzle, right? And every body of water is its own unique environment. So to go out there with a blanket statement like you should be killing a limit of bass on every body of water is as irresponsible as it was for us to utilize the opposite end of the spectrum and releasing 100% of our bass.
Right? Out of curiosity, what's the feedback been down in your neck of the woods on this?
It's funny. People have told me I've got some pretty big balls for coming out in public to voice this different perspective. But really, for me, it was an easy one because I've done my research. And that's the beauty about science, is that you can duplicate these experiments amongst different scientists, and they will often, if not always, lead to the same observations. It's completely objective. And there are studies done by different state DNRs, by independent biologists, by private watershed biologists that are actually hired to grow bigger bass. And you can extrapolate the science and the data behind it at a very fundamental level, like a system, like a closed pond that only has largemouth and bluegill. Pretty simple, right? Yeah. And you use that as a fundamental basis to understand that body of water has finite resources. It has a carrying capacity of X amount of pounds of fish, and it takes X amount of pounds of food for that bass to put on 1 pound of weight. And you start doing the math and start realizing something as simple as harvesting smaller segments of that population creates a lot more food and space available for the remaining bass to get big. It's a pretty easy concept, and then you can scale it up and you start adding all these different factors like other species. And the bigger the watershed, the more complex it gets. The more species that you have intertwined, the more complex it gets.
I'll tell you where it might get a little dicey, and I can't speak about California and the largemouth bass population in California, but I would like to speak to the Ontario largemouth bass, and in particular, let's call it Canadian largemouth bass. They have predators here that eat those babies every single minute of every single day. So it's hard, depending on the body of water, it's hard to kind of, say, okay, should we be taking more? Should we be taking less? When we already know that these fish are struggling every day to stay alive because there's pike, there's muskie, there's walleye, there's all these other big toothy predators that predate on them at some point in their life cycle. Obviously, once they get into that 5, 6, 7, 8 pound range, that's not so much. But getting up to that, they're part of the food chain. Is that not the same in your lakes in California?
There's got to be stripers and stuff like that down there, doesn't there?
Yeah. Some of our lakes do have landlocked stripers in them. And then there's been a recent influx of flathead catfish, which has become a huge management problem for our bodies of water because
Right.
Throughout California, we're not really able to utilize live bait like you can in other states in the U.S. So you throw that on top of access to the water because we can't really night fish unless you pull a special permit for a night tournament or something. You kind of got a double whammy of these growing flathead populations that are decimating everything.
Wow.
And adding even more pressure to the limited forage base. And, you know, some of these bass anglers are barking up the wrong tree by complaining about the trout stocks and how their pet bass aren't being fed anymore instead of complaining about the lack of trout fishing opportunities for their kids or their neighbors or their friends. And that's really a short-sighted take on that complex issue. Right. Now, we have no control really as anglers of how many trout are being put in our waters to offset that normal carrying capacity and adding to the forage base. But we absolutely have one of the management tools that the DNRs and the DFW here in California utilize to manage these fisheries, and that's harvesting your daily bag limit of bass, which nobody does. And once again, that data and the science is there. You can go back decades of their backlogs and see that, you know, as recently as the 2000s, which doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but apparently it was 20 plus years ago now. The harvest rates of largemouth bass on our bodies of water were in the 30 to 40 percentile. And since then, it's been hovering between 1 and 3%.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, but that makes sense. That's the same as our old school mentality fades off and fades away. And, you know, like my grandfather would keep every fish going in the world.
Largemouth bass?
Yeah, they keep everything to eat. I got buddies in Napanee that keep every largemouth still.
Wow.
We'll go back back north and get them in nice little clean water and there's a nice limit there.
Probably good.
You know? But
Well,
our kids and his kids and their kids and Oliver's kids and all that, we're all getting this mentality as catch and release, and it's just built a whole change there, right? A whole balance change.
Some people might argue with you, though, Oliver. You know, fishing means a lot of different things to different folks, right? So not everybody is in search of that trophy every time they go out. I mean, some people just want to go out, whether it's with their family, the kids, friends, or by themselves. They just want to catch some fish and have fun and have that interaction with nature. And so, you know, I can see where you'd get some argument with the philosophy of a trophy fish being scarce now. With who cares, you know what I mean? All we want to do is just go out, wet a line, get a couple of bass, 2 pounders, 2.5 pounders. What's the big deal, right? That's got to be floating out there as well. That's
a pretty common response. Right. Guys that are afraid that this is going to lead to the decimation of the bass population. Yeah. And here's something that I want to remind everybody of: a largemouth and a smallmouth bass are just overgrown sunfish. Yeah. And sunfish, as a family of fishes, are very prolific breeders. Look at the attempts that an entire nation like Japan has attempted to eradicate them. You cannot. Right. It is not possible. And in the worst case scenario, if you overharvest a body of water, the ability of that population to bounce back to that 1 to 3 pound class range is less than 1.5 to 2 years in prime optimal conditions, which you may have created by over harvesting. So they'll be right back. Yeah. So what's the trade-off? Like, it's interesting. I did a shocking survey out of an electroshock boat with the DFW on one of my home lakes. And this lake is a small urban body of water, 240 acres, very much known to be an incredibly tough bass fishery. Like, it is an accomplishment if you can catch a bass, let alone a limit of bass. Wow. And if you're going to use the angling public as a surveying tool, it's disingenuous to the data, because my ability with a fishing rod is not necessarily representing what is actually living in that body of water. We shocked like 300 bass in the span of 6 hours. And people would have been shocked to see how many bass and that we shocked up. And it was interesting because I could see a direct correlation over the lifetime of me fishing for these bass on this body of water. And I started calling out like, oh, you're probably not going to shock anything on this stretch. You're probably going to shock some off of that point and maybe this hump or along this rock wall, but definitely probably not going to shock one off this dam. And it was pretty fascinating to see how spot on those observations were over the years with, you know, a very primitive and poor sampling tool that is a fishing rod versus electricity in the water, and everything's coming up.
We've seen a couple examples of that in our travels.
Just because we can't catch them with the rod and reel and a hook doesn't mean there aren't a plethora of bass in these waters. That's what fishing pressure does.
Yeah.
What are you hoping to accomplish with this? By the way, are you looking for the DNR to jump on board and say, hey, you know what? I think we should start marketing consumption of largemouth bass. Is that what you're kind of hoping for, or you just sort of want to make it a trend and maybe like-minded people like yourself starts doing it on their own?
I'm selfishly hoping for an opportunity to catch another giant bass at one of my local lakes instead of having to drag my bass boat from LA to Toronto again, which I might do this spring, by the way.
Boy.
Good.
I've done that several times now, but it's because I've understood that the grass has definitely become greener in other spaces and territories. And I was willing to drive away from this former mecca of trophy bass fishing because it frankly doesn't exist anymore. I would like to be able to drive to my lakes and actually make a cast and have the hope that I can tangle with another double-digit largemouth.
Is this right like a statewide? Like you're making it sound like doom and gloom here in the whole state of California.
Oh, it sucks.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, when's the last time you heard about a trout fisherman that caught a 15 to 18 pounder on a piece of power bait fishing for trout?
Yeah.
That used to happen a couple times a season.
That's true, yeah.
Wow.
Anybody, just for anybody listening here, by the way, you got to look up Oliver. And Oliver, actually, I don't know the exact size, but I discovered Oliver many years ago when it said it was the biggest largemouth bass ever caught on camera or whatever. How big was that fish? It was a
17 pound, 7 ounces.
17.7, and he's got it on he's got it on camera.
Wow.
It is this. So the guy, he's been after big basses. So I mean, for a long time, but he's proven he can catch them. So, but anybody wants to see what a 17-pound largemouth looks like on camera, check out his YouTube channel. It's pretty scary.
What I equate to California bass. Years ago, I don't even know how far back I'm going, but I had the retail operation at the time. A company called Castaic was trying to market their products into Canada, their plastic baits into Canada. And I remember seeing this line of great, big, wonderful looking plastic baits. Swim baits. And I remember asking the rep, because he was telling, it's a company in California, and I said, what in the world would they be fishing with these in California? He said, largemouth bass. I just about shit. They were bigger than some of the largemouth bass that I was catching.
Look what he's going to show you here. This is what these guys throw.
I mean,
wow.
I'm kind of mid reorganizing my bass boat for another cross-continent,
There it is right there. Look at that. Wow.
Targeting big bass.
Any largemouth bass angler in, let's call it Canada or upper state, even New York, sees that and says, you're not throwing that for largemouth bass. But that's how big, how big they are in or that's how big we think they are. Obviously, that's not the case anymore.
Well, you'd be surprised. I caught a 13-inch bass on that very same bait I held up to the camera a few weeks ago.
Oh, my God, really?
Yeah.
Is that company still in business? Are they still producing baits?
Yeah, they've been sold several times now, probably. So it's more of a big box kind of brand.
Okay.
But as far as the underground big bait and trophy fishing culture, it's blossomed and bloomed all over the continent.
Wow.
Including in Canada. Wow. Yeah. So people are starting to see that it is absolutely a normal way to target bass. And one of the interesting things that I took away from some of these biologists that I've become acquainted with is that a 16-inch largemouth is fully capable of swallowing an 11-inch largemouth.
Holy shit.
They're crazy. We know that, right, from the tank.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're crazy.
Yeah.
They're crazy.
I mean, that's a 3.5 pounder,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Able to eat 1.25 pound fish. It's nuts.
Wow. Hey, Oliver, that bait you just held up. So if Oliver's out there throwing that big bait for largemouth bass, no matter where he is, but let's say your favorite body of water, what would you expect to be a normal day of fishing, a catch? I mean, like you're throwing a Ned rig, a plastic, a jig, you could catch 20 or 30 fish in a day. What about that bait? You know, what's your expectations?
An exceptional day would be in the double digits, like 10 to 20 fish. Right. Like that's an exceptional day.
Right.
A good day could be 5. Like you can absolutely catch 20 to 30 pounds on that for 5 fish all throughout the country, including upstate New York where I'm spending time, including Vermont where I'm spending time this spring, including Champlain. And we've done it in the Toronto area in the past as well. And, but realistically, you need to go out there with the mindset of getting one bite. Right. And understanding that failure is a big part of the learning process with a big lure targeting the biggest bass in your body of water, and understanding that they typically represent a small portion of the population. So right off the bat, your odds of connecting with one successfully are much lower than any other traditional technique. But if you've reached that point in your fishing arc where you're wanting to challenge yourself and be able to find consistent success targeting larger than average fish, I mean, there's so much information out there now versus when I was coming up and we had to learn the hard way. And you guys are probably old enough to remember when the fishing culture was very much a secretive culture.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody shared anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. Yeah, so true.
And now it's become the opposite of that as people are trying to clamor for attention and leverage themselves into the dream of fishing for a living somehow. But yeah, there's plenty of information.
Can we just throw this out there too? Because I can just hear people out there listening to this saying, "Oh yeah, well that's a bunch of crap." Because my biggest fish have come on, little tiny Ned or a little tiny tube or a little tiny something or other. I think what Oliver is saying, though, I think you should take to heart if you're targeting big fish and you want to up your chances tremendously for those big fish, then obviously big lures. And that's not just for bass. I think that can go for pretty much any species. Mm-hmm. However, never rule out. And I'm sure you also, on your boat, when you go out on your typical fishing day, you've got some little stuff stashed around somewhere. There you go. There you go.
There it is.
That's it. So in your
Quite
opinion,
a contrast. That's awesome.
as a trophy hunter, in your opinion, what would make, and let's say that a trophy largemouth nationally is I think a 6 pound plus fish can be categorized as trophy. What would make a 6 pound fish jump on that tiny little bait you just held up versus that great big monstrosity you had up there a second ago?
Well, once again, you want to talk about sampling techniques, right? And in the vast majority of anglers utilizing a traditional bait, traditional size, that's going to skew the numbers of trophy bass being caught versus the much smaller minority of dedicated trophy anglers that often don't even dabble with anything smaller than 7 or 8 inches in length.
Right.
Now, you're going to see a drastic just result as far as numbers of fish over whatever threshold you want to create. That 6 pound mark is a great threshold. Mm-hmm. Versus the masses of guys throwing a wacky rig weightless worm. You're going to have people stumble upon those fish, but let's utilize each one of those examples as an opportunity to compare their body of work over even a lifetime versus one of the trophy bass hunters. Now I would be more than willing to bet my money that the dedicated trophy bass guy has more fish under his belt than over 6 pounds than the traditional guy or even the tournament guy that stumbles on them occasionally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to happen. Yeah. But I've caught all of my double-digit largemouth on a big bait, all of them. And I'm over 50 or so, all, prior to forward facing sonar as well, which is another caveat now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, a whole nother wrinkle into this trophy fishing dynamic. And you're just not going to see those kinds of numbers with someone throwing peanuts at those elephants.
Yeah.
Well put.
Well put. Do you have, you must, on your northern U.S. and Canadian trips, you must be encountering pike and muskie with these baits then, I would think. They must be a pain in your ass almost.
It's interesting, as a Southern California kid in a state that has no SOX species and having to digest other regions' fishing cultures through TV as a kid, In Fisherman was one of the most impactful programs for a young, hopefully scientifically minded angler. And they made pike and muskie fishing look cool.
Right.
So as I started to experience them, I actually really enjoyed it. And I think it's an interesting phenomenon that we have as regional fishing cultures, that we, spread this energy, whether it's excitement or disdain for a particular species of fish, because that's what everybody else is doing. And I've even tried to shed a new light on local saltwater species that are underappreciated here in Southern California. Right. It's like, what are you guys bitching about a barred sand bass for? That thing pulls harder than your stupid calico bass sitting in the kelp just because it's not as pretty. This, that, and a third. But like, one man's gold is another man's dream fish.
Without question.
Bowfin, for example, are badass.
Oh, yeah. No kidding.
Yeah, so when I hear guys, bitching that their frog got destroyed by, 8, 9, 10 pound bowfin, I'm like, where's that grass mat at? Head me that direction.
I need to know.
They will destroy your frogs. There's no doubt about it. It's funny he said that.
And I'm good with it. I've just really learned.
Safe to say that you're not one-dimensional. Obviously, bass isn't the only thing that you like pulling on the end of your line. You're just an angler at heart that has sort of focused in a little bit on largemouth, probably because of the geography that you're involved in. But you're just an angler in general. Yeah,
absolutely. I've always been multi-species, and partly in due to the effect that guys like Al Lidner and the whole Doug Stange Infisherman crew had on me. Every episode was multi-species. Sure. I'm like, oh, those walleye are cool. Like, those pike are cool. I love catching bluegill. So if it swims, I love to target them. And we operate saltwater charters here at home now, showcasing our unique saltwater fishing culture, which nobody ever talks about.
Right.
And when I swing through the Northeast and into Canada, I love to target 40-inch plus pike. And
everybody likes that. That's
nobody. And that's the thing. Like, how can you celebrate a 40 to 45-inch pike, without just shitting on those little hammer handles? Nobody likes those guys.
Right? Exactly.
By the way, those little hammer handles, or even say a 6 or 8, up to 8, no more than that, but certainly between 4, 5, and 6. You want to talk about a great fish to eat? That
I'm right there with you.
Baby is the best.
It's so good.
The best.
So, I will say they are my favorite freshwater fish to eat.
Here.
A black crappie is really close.
Yeah.
Flathead catfish are delicious. And you made some jokes about the palatability of these largemouth.
Yeah.
And part of that is this whole re-education that I'm trying to help other people understand. I just came back from the Chicagoland Expo, and I have my buddy Brandon Polinick. I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he's a pretty top level Bassmaster elite pro, along with very passionate members of my Big Bass Dream Team in the Chicago and Midwest area, most of which have never eaten a bass. And I took them out to a restaurant, and lo and behold, they had steamed largemouth as an option.
No!
So I made it a point to order it for both tables, and I made everybody eat a piece.
Nice.
And it was interesting because all those reactions that you're probably thinking in your head were definitely happening at these tables.
Yeah.
And I got guys that are like, oh man, I just can't do it. Like, there's like a superstition thing, and I had to break it down to my buddy Cody. It's like, trust me, buddy, it's not gonna hurt your fishing the way you've been going lately.
This was in Chicago that they had it in a restaurant.
This was a week ago. Yeah, this is a week ago. We posted it on our social and everything. But these are farm raised largemouth,
right.
which are actually a very commonly farmed fish now. And at $49.99 a pound is what they were charging us in this restaurant.
Shit.
Okay,
US.
you're not getting you're not getting those prices if it tastes like mud, like I've told people for decades.
So is it like what can you?
Is it
compare
worth $50 a pound?
It's not that different from bluegill.
Okay,
Really?
Okay, you're going to get bigger flakes in the meat just because the fish are bigger, but it's not a bad fish. And one of the things that we've learned a ton from the saltwater side of our charter business is, have you guys heard of the ikejime technique?
No.
The Japanese technique utilized on high-grade sushi species like bluefin tuna, like some of these tuna that we're catching. And the idea is you brain spike it to create immediate death, euthanize the fish, and then you take a wire core and you actually run it through that hole that you just created in the head into its spinal cord to destroy the spinal cord, and that helps relax the meat, and you bleed the fish simultaneously. And those three actions and putting that fish on ice immediately has made such an incredible difference in palatability of fish that we already consider to be good eating, but normally just kind of let them like suffocate to death, even just over ice or in a gunny sack on a charter boat, for example. And we've started doing it to everything and seeing how much of a difference that's making on the fishing or the fish eating quality. And we're going to be doing it with yellow perch. We're going to be doing it with every walleye that eats one of our bass baits. We're going to be doing it with largemouth and smallmouth, where we're going to be harvesting them, because it has proven to make a difference in the flavor and the profile across the board. So, eating fish is very common in the Northeast and the Midwest and into Canada. Try it on some of these other species. You can even do a compare and contrast, and then utilizing that on your black bass species might bring it to a level that you weren't even aware of. And when you realize some sucker just paid $50 a pound to have that on a plate as a novelty, you're gonna be like, holy crap, man, like
crazy
price of groceries these days, I might just keep a couple and potentially help grow trophy bass in your bodies of water.
How long does it take to do your little system there, spiking them on the head and pulling the spine and whatever? Is it
pretty fast?
Is it?
Yeah. It takes just like anything else, practice, right? Like I actually have a couple like aluminum bats hanging on the wall that we use for the saltwater fish.
Right up your alley.
Clubber.
The old clubber right there.
Yeah.
So, if you want ultimate shock factor in getting people to talk about this topic, a great way to do it is to club the largemouth, on video.
You're breaking my heart, brother. You're breaking my heart.
I caught a 4 3/4 pound largemouth last fallish, and I said, I was by myself, so I put him in the live well. I just got my camera ready and went to grab him, and he was already turned up on his side. And I thought, shit, what am I going to do? And then I thought, I can't deep six it. It's illegal to throw it back, whatever. And I thought, my father-in-law. I called him up. Yeah, bring that here. He sucked thing down like it was going out of style. He loved it. So, but I guess I'll have to. I've tried one largemouth in my life. I'll tell everybody this, and it was a long time ago, and it was about 1.5 pounds, and we thought, let's try it just to fry it, and it was good. It tasted just like like smallmouth. We've had smallmouth before.
Yeah, smallmouth tasted
like
great.
smallmouth. So.
Smallmouth is outstanding.
Smallmouth are delicious. So just the simple act of even just bleeding them and then immediately transferring to ice will make a huge difference.
Yep.
I guarantee.
Agreed.
Oliver, tell us a little bit about this Big Bass Dream concept that you've had going. Tell us what folks. First of all, tell them where they can enjoy it and get a hold of you and all that stuff. But tell us what it is and where did it come from. What was it?
Yeah, we alluded to it a little bit. I grew up here in Southern California, just east of LA here, and surrounded by legendary trophy largemouth fishermen through the 90s into the 2000s, and was seeing firsthand that this was possible. And people have a weird conception that, man, all they had to do is go to California and then catch themselves a 10-pounder because we kicked out so many of them.
Right.
But the interesting is that because of our high fishing pressure and our limited bodies of water, those fish were never easy to catch. The big difference now is that we just don't have them in the numbers that we had. You're going to find an occasional fish here and there breaking 10 pounds, but there's a local lake that we fish. It's called Lake Casitas, and you guys might have heard of this. This is one of those trophy historic, big bass lakes. And when I started fishing, it was kind of on the downtrend of its heyday in the mid to late 2000s. You could come into a night tournament for 5 fish with 40 pounds and be nervous because a lot of times that wasn't enough. And for the past decade or so, those weights have dropped to like 14, 17 pounds.
Wow.
And because of things like the drought that we've had here in California, that lake has dropped down to like, I think 27% capacity was its lowest point. That's 100 vertical feet. And it came up pretty much within 6 months, 2.5 years ago. So now we're experiencing what's called new lake effect. Have you guys heard of that dynamic before?
Really? No.
The most prolific growing periods of a body of water are when the lake is new. You've got an influx of nutrients. The phytoplankton feeds on the nutrients. The zooplankton feeds on the phytoplankton. Now you've got this incredible biomass at the bottom of the food chain that now the forage species can grow up on. You've got all this room in the new bodies of water, typically a reservoir, that allow these fish to grow to monumental sizes. It's pretty much what happened at Lake OHIV in Texas. Very similar dynamic. Extreme drought, a hurricane dumped that lake full of water, had new lake effect, and you've been watching this boom of teen-sized largemouth coming out of this one lake out of central West Texas. And we're experiencing a little bit of that now, but you've also got a community of guys, including guides and other passionate anglers, coming to me, talking to me about how they've seen the content, and they started harvesting some of these fish themselves. Well, just recently, last week, they finally weighed a 12-pounder in the tournament and a 9-pounder, and guys have caught some 11s, and this is more double-digit activity than you've seen in over a decade on a historic body of water that has the genetics. But now we've got the opportunity with these factors coming together to create conditions that are growing truly big bass. And man, Big Bass Dreams was really it started off as a video series, as a documentary series, honestly, because most of my friends that I grew up fishing with, very few of which actually went down the big lure rabbit hole chasing big bass, were calling BS when I started unlocking the puzzle and figuring out how to fool some of these bigger bass on our home bodies of water, which, very few of us would catch one over 7 pounds, even being in California. We would not stumble on them with our peanuts on the end of our hook. Mm-hmm. One of us would get like a 6, 7, or 8. Maybe somebody got a 9 or a 10 occasionally. But we didn't know those fish really existed until we threw something really big at them, because it changed their behavior. They're willing to swim out of whatever they're living on or hunting on to come show themselves. And they're like, oh my God, look at the size of these fish on a lake we fished our whole lives on. And I actually had to start video recording all of this because my own friends are calling BS on the things I was describing. And then all of a sudden, years into it, I've got a library of content. And, I'm showing my closest friends, because this is still the era where none of us shared info. Right? I'm not telling you what pound line I'm using or where in the column I'm winding that bait or any little subtle nuance that I figured to trigger a bite from one of these hard to catch fish. And like, man, you got to do something with it. And this is, the time when people used to buy DVDs. And this is how, Big Bass Dreams started. And it was because I was living the dream of most bass fishermen with the frequency and the size of the bass I was able to fool. I think in 2012 alone, I had a 7-week span after taking 2 full years off from bass fishing, mind you. I hooked up to this point, probably my second or third biggest bass I've ever hooked. Probably 14 to 15 pound class, twice on the same cast, and lost her both times.
Whoa.
And that was a part of that was inadequate technology and gearing and the reels I was using. Part of that was, not as much experience, so inexperience. And that was like at the end of a 6-year run of throwing nothing but a big ass bait, trying to catch a big 15 plus pound bass. And I got my shot twice on one cast. And after I lost her the second time, it just, I was done with it. I had to walk away from bass fishing for a couple of years. But when I came back, I got laid off from the construction management industry in 2011 for like the 4th or 5th time. And my boss just told me he couldn't bring me back the final time because it had gotten that bad. And I had this time on my hands. So I was like, I'm going to dust off some of my big bait rods and chuck some big hunks of rubber and wood at these fish just to do something. And I struggled for the first month through January. And then we kind of hit about this time of year, about a week from now, where we hit this magical kind of pre-spawn phase around the first full moon. You get that first push of that population of big females that set up to get ready to spawn. And I went on a tear. First day I had a 7 and an 11. The next day I had a 10 and a 9 on a different body of water. Wow. And then for the next 7 weeks, I caught 17 that were at least 10 pounds or bigger.
Wow.
That's a nice run.
Wow. I caught them every day. I caught them a different way and a different lure every day. I had some of my best friends in the boat with me throughout that whole deal. We're pretty much just playing net bitch because they're too far behind and trying to chase what they saw me do the day before or even earlier in the day. And having just the ability to be fluid and adaptable and just try different things all the time allowed me to keep fooling these fish. I was self-conditioning. As one man on a 2,000 acre body of water, for example, I was conditioning a population of fish by myself. Wow. And then we put together the highlights of that run in our first DVD project in 2013. And, here we are, 13 years later almost, as we continue to stay fluid and, affect the culture, hopefully in a positive manner, and help other people realize their own big bass streams. And one of the ways that we're doing that this year is we're actually doing our first online big bass streams tournament. Now we have a northern division, but perhaps we can explore a Canadian division in 2026.
Nice.
And encourage people to fish, amongst our community of big bass dreamers. And it's a 3-month tournament, 5 longest bass. The tournament is CPR, right? Catch, photograph, release. The release is now optional.
Oh, you were doing so. I was buying in. I was all with you. You were lulling me there, and then all of a sudden, boom! You hit me right between the eyes again.
Catch, photograph, release, or fry.
Or fry. There you go.
Or fry. And here's the thing, right? Like there's no blanket statement here. We're not saying we should keep every bass. There's definitely a threshold, and you want to maintain the higher. The higher weight classes of these fish and return those fish to a system.
For sure.
But anything less than 3 pounds, I don't care where you are. Like that's on the chopping block.
Yeah.
He's easily replaced. Even here in California, I talked about that shocking survey, and it's actually been mirrored on several bodies of water. Out of those 300 fish, 200 of them were over 15 inches, which sounds great. Mm. These are 3.5 to 5.5 pound fish. It's like, oh man, 2/3 of the population were that big. To the casual observer, that seems like a good thing until you realize only 3 out of the 300 were over 6.
Right.
Wow.
That's the shocking part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
How can folks get a hold of you and follow you and enjoy the commentary and probably enjoy an awful lot of good fish tips that you are eagerly waiting to share with people? How can they get a hold of you?
Sure. You can find Big Bass Dreams on virtually every platform: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, begrudgingly TikTok. I have my own personal page, which is just my name on all those same platforms. Apparently, I'm now a writing contributor to Wired to Fish, so you'll be seeing some written articles throughout this season on a multitude of techniques, everything from traditional techniques, which have created the foundation of how I target them with a really big bait, and using finesse applications and mindsets, even with 30-pound line and a 10-inch hunk of rubber.
Yeah.
Size and finesse are not mutually exclusive.
We know somebody in our circle that has been preaching that message for years, and we've been laughing at him. But how true it is. Hear, hear. Oliver, listen, want to thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate you making some time out of your busy schedule. It's always nice to be the pioneer, the leader, because there's only one first. And in this particular case, advocating for the consumption of largemouth bass, especially out of a state like California that's known for trophies, that's quite the statement. You were probably the first, I'm going to safely say, to start preaching that sort of messaging. But it makes a whole lot of sense. I do urge people to make sure that you look into this and realize that it's not one size fits all. There
Correct.
are different regions, different bodies of water, different circumstances that will call for something a little more unique to that particular area. So
Absolutely.
but I love it, man. Can't thank you enough for joining us. I want to wish you the best of luck. Hey, when you're up this neck of the woods, look us up, man. Love to hook up.
Will
with
do.
You. Sure.
Yeah, it's been too long since I've actually got to cast at a Canadian largemouth or smallmouth. So I'd love to share the
Definitely
boat with you guys.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you, Oliver. Appreciate it. Oliver Nye.
Big Bass Dreams.
Take it for what you want. That is quite a statement. And as he said at the beginning of his segment, you have to have quite a set of balls to come out with a statement like that.
Especially for a guy like him.
Well, I was
right?
going to say, especially when you're selling the whole notion of being a trophy hunter and spending all your life looking for largemouth bass, to come out and also be probably the first one to say, but we should be eating some of them, fellas.
And his mind frame, his theory, in a sense, when we were talking there, I got thinking about Sean's Lake, and not largemouth bass, but muskie. You can't hardly catch a big muskie in that lake anymore. Yet you can catch 20 little guys or 10 little guys in a weekend for sure. I mean, if we didn't catch 10 small muskies in a weekend, it wouldn't have been a normal weekend. That's what it's like now. It's riddled with all these little muskies, and that's not really the way you want it. I'm wondering if there's all these little guys are just overpopulating and there's no room for getting bigger.
We've been on lakes like that before. One that comes to mind is that was underutilized was Calling Lake in Alberta. Remember those walleye?
Unbelievable.
There was a billion, not a million, a billion walleye to be caught, but they were all just stunted
scrawny,
and scrawny,
like guts
little
going
fish.
in. Right? They were just
and
so
that was a case,
big heads.
and they had a zero retention rate. I think at that time the province of Alberta had a zero retention rate on that lake. So. There's something to this. Yeah. It's not.
It's management, right? It's something we're not pros at, but maybe our M&Rs and our scientists and biologists, maybe they can, give some science on it.
Yes. Have we talked to Dr. Cook about this at all?
We talked to Dr. Paul Radomski down
about
in
walleye,
the States
right?
about walleye. I don't know if we've brought it up with Cook, actually. That'd be a good one, yeah.
It's funny though, because you look at walleye, like you look at Ted's Lake, he's got a zero catch and release, and it's all big ones you're getting. You're hardly getting any small ones. So I think it's all about the body of water too, right? I think you have to really look into the body of water.
It's all about the carrying capacity, technically, right? So maybe Hawk Lake just has a crazy carrying capacity with with the bait source and stuff in there.
Don't know.
It's a one of. There's no doubt about it. I don't think we've ever run across another situation like Hawk Lake. There's just nothing like it. And it'd be interesting to see how Ted would view this podcast once he Ted Putnam would look at this.
Yeah, he'll have something sarcastic to say. What's that?
Yeah. He had some comments about the Paul Radomski one. Too.
Oh yeah, Ted's always got comments.
But I don't think you can compare the two because let's be honest about it. Where largemouth live, there are usually a ton of them. I don't think
Yeah.
there's any shortage. Now, not necessarily big fish, but a ton of bass, right?
Right.
So, I think for the most part, we should be looking at some
wonder-
level of consumption.
What about bigger lakes, though? Very quickly, like a Rice Lake or a Bay of Quinte. Would it make a difference either way? I mean, yeah, you could kill them and it's not going to hurt anything. That's one thing. But if you kill the smaller ones, is it going to help that body of water? There's so much forage, food area, weed beds, et cetera, that I don't know if you'd affect it. So it'd still be okay killing them and eating them, but I don't think you'd be hurting the population. But I don't know if you'd be helping the big fish population. You know what I mean? On a huge body of water like that. So that's it's all speculation, I guess.
Yeah, you can tip the scales one way or the other by overdoing anything.
Absolutely.
In moderation, I think anything is doable. I think if we have that attitude that moving forward, maybe this summer, maybe we can kind of start thinking that way, moving forward, that on a body of water that has bass and walleye, and we traditionally take a limit of walleye out for food, maybe that's where the experiment starts, and you say, well, you know what, maybe I'll take a couple of bass instead, and just slowly, in moderation, everything is safe. It's when you go over that safe point that it becomes. But anyways, it's an interesting topic. I definitely would like to talk to our fish doc, Stephen Cook, on that and see what he has to say.
Interesting.
That or it. What a great show. Very, very
interesting guy.
I do have something for Peter to read over there.
Oh, my.
Well, then why don't we have Peter read that right now?
Would be this one here, Dino?
Yes, sir.
The largemouth?
There you go. And it's a largemouth.
Wow. Well, we're not interrupting the program, but we will say we're interrupting this program to bring you the much anticipated bonus code for the latest Fishing Canada giveaways. This week's code is largemouth.
No.
LARGEMOUTH, all caps. That's largemouth. You can get 10 free entries towards our current giveaways. Giver.
Come on now.
Largemouth. Also want to remind folks the ongoing Fishing Canada contest where you can win a bevy of goodies at any given time. All you have to do is go in and enter. Brought to you by, in a lot of cases, not all, brought to you by the good folks at J&B Cycle.
Come on
J&B
now.
Cycle and Marine, Ontario's largest Princecraft and Mercury dealer. If you have not been to their site and check them out, it is a breathtaking array of goodies that you will find
Indeed.
there. J&B Cycle, that's jbcycle.com if you're looking for their website, by the way. But other than that, I think we're good to go.
Beauty.
I want to remind folks, once again, for those of you in the province of Ontario, there's a big election going on. If you're not aware of it, you need to look into it because we need to get out and make a difference and stop belly aching about, I don't like that guy. He doesn't make any sense. He's always taking money away from me and I can't make ends meet. Well, that's the whole thing. At election time, I talked to a guy just today. It's funny because he's a businessman, which really blows my mind. He's a little rough around the edges, but nonetheless, he's an entrepreneur. Let's call him an entrepreneur. I wouldn't call him a businessman, but I would call him an entrepreneur.
Oh, boy. I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast.
Well, I hope he does, and I would like to, name him, but I won't. But he's lecturing me on, the importance of having the right people in the right places, pulling the right levers, pushing the right buttons, and how he hates this guy, and that guy's unqualified, and that woman shouldn't even be in politics. And he's going on, and he's like, I'm thinking, wow, this guy is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to politics and voting and all that stuff. I might want to hang out with him a little bit, and maybe some of it will rub off on me. He sounds so good. So,
where's this going?
Because he's a total moron. That's where this is going. Because so then I said to him, "Well, that's great. This is this is the opportunity that we wait for to see if we can make a difference and pick the person that we think based on our research and information gathering and make hopefully the right choice this time, and we'll all be better off for it." And he looks at me. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We got to get out and vote here in a few days." "Oh, I don't do any of that crap. It's all bullshit." He said, I would never do that.
Bunch of bullshit.
I'm not kidding you. I just
Oh, my God. Oh my
crap
God.
myself.
Yeah.
Here
He
this
cannot
guy's
say a word.
He's
Yeah.
giving me a whole lecture on how important it is and how the people in power they don't know this. There's dumb. Like he's going on, and then he says, "Yeah, I don't vote."
Wow.
Oh, God help us all. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, that's why we are where we are today, and we need to make a difference. Get out. I don't care who you vote for. Just get out and do it. You've got a couple of weeks left. Take advantage of the opportunity. That's it. Let's not get too political. On behalf of the entire crew, Volva was patiently sitting through this whole ordeal about massacring fish and
I didn't even think of the-
I was cringing on his
I
behalf.
looked over at him during the whole spine thing.
Oh, I want to do that right in front of Volvo with that head. What?
Will you shut up? Volva, Director of Photography at Fishing Canada, and here on Outdoor Journal Radio Network podcast. Nicky V, busy doing his social media stuff as he usually is, and listening to us ramble on. And over there, we have Dean Taylor,
Come on
producer
now.
at large of this wonderful program. He's Peter Bowman. I'm Angelo Viola. Thanks for joining us. Catch you next time. This episode of Outdoor Journal Radio has been brought to you in part by the Invasive Species Centre, protecting Canada's land and water from invasive species. Freedom Cruise Canada, rent the boat, own the memories. J&B Cycle and Marine, your home for all things power sports, boats, and equipment. And Sail, the ultimate destination for your outdoor adventures.